What a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, with Ellen Edmondson.
Ellen is a true gem. I feel better already. And yeah, the conversation is full of really useful reflection on the human condition and the optimistic ways that we can bring ourselves forward. And of course, I anticipated, because of her book title, Love and Light, it having a kind of ungroundedness to it, but it was absolutely not that. It was all very grounded and felt very rich. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what it does for you folks. What was your experience with her like, Greg?
It was really wonderful, like you said, well grounded. And I like the surprise at the end that Marc introduces for everyone. So
Yeah,
I
stick around for that.
stick around to the end because there's a nice little podcast surprise. I've never experienced that in a podcast. And
See? This is what happens when you go on a wild ride with a couple of Moped Outlaws. So please subscribe. Please donate generously to Blast and the Compton Cowboys. And just remember, people need you.
Sis, hallo?
Blijven.
Stuur zeker wegen dem.
Wil je iets niet, joh?
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Marc.
And we're live with another ride with our special guest today is Ellen Edmondson, who is I'm looking at your website, award-winning author of, we could see the book, Love and Light, speaker, spiritual guide, and intuition mentor. And that is of real interest to me. And behind your shoulders, is that a photo of you by the candle?
Oh, no, those are actually, they're pictures by, I don't know if you've heard of a young lady, her name is Akin, I think I'm saying her name right, who did those portraits when she was in her teens. So they're pretty amazing art work that she's done.
That's wonderful. So you're
welcome,
an art collector
Ellen,
as well.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with both of you.
What is an intuition mentor? Because mentorship seems to me you're guiding someone in a realm. Do you guide people on how to be intuitive?
Well, that's a great question, because that's something, yes, I do. We all have intuition, and it's something that people don't always understand, or really have a good grasp of. But intuition for me is just, it's how life is speaking to us. We're always getting guidance, and life is always speaking to us. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we slow down and fighting out the noise and slowing down long enough to listen? Because a lot of times all of us, we all are searching at times for answers outside of ourselves. We think the best answer is in, this book or in this class or from, even a parent or someone around us. But the real key is getting quiet and listening inward and noticing what is true for yourself and letting that really guide your way.
So what do you think helps people slow down and learn to listen to that inner voice?
I think it's something that you have to establish as a practice for yourself. But I will tell you, and I can just tell you from my own life experiences, that when you don't do that enough, life will find a way to make that happen for you.
Yes, it will slow you down. Yes, it will
slow you down. And, that happens to all of us. And when you look at your life and you look back on it, or you look at what you're going through, you'll see moments where you've been slowed down to pay attention to what is really true for you, or what is really the next best step for you.
What are some of the ways that you've had an intuitive voice speak to you that has altered the way that your life goes in either major or subtle ways?
Oh, I love that question because I can talk about this for a long time. But, just looking backwards on my life, I have several inflection points where I'd say my intuition, that greater guidance, was just really trying to get my attention and move me forward. And I'll dive into a couple of them for you. But one of my first ones, and now back up, I'll say, I call people hear the word awakening. That's a word that you'll hear thrown around quite a bit. And people think it's some big flash of something that happens and all of a sudden you have this new insight and way of living. But for me, I look at awakenings that you have a series of them all throughout your life that is actually guiding and leading you on your path of purpose and what you're meant to do. And so I don't look at it as one big experience. It can culminate, it can feel like that, but you're actually always being led to that big moment. But one for me, for most of my career, I was in the federal government. And I went in at an undergrad, young age 22. But during that time, I worked my way up to senior executive by the time I was 36, which was pretty fast because most people don't hit it usually until their 50s. But I worked my way up pretty quickly. And part of that happening, when I look back on it, was I just had good, what I call gut instinct. But it was really like my intuition. I really had this sense of knowing and understanding things that sometimes other people didn't sense or see it the way I did. And it helped me maneuver the ladder pretty quickly. But within that time, I moved up so fast. And the thing I realized was I started getting quiet and I got to that point being a senior executive and I started looking and it was like I lost my joy in what I was doing. And I was dealing with a lot of top level executives. I was traveling across the country. I had big money, all these things. But when it got to a point, I was looking at myself, I was in the mirror and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And it just got to the point I walked in, submitted my resignation with no other job. And I had a house and a car and all this. I wasn't married at the time. And I just quit because my external success, and a lot of people are like, oh, you're crazy for quitting. And what are you going to do? But I was like, externally, I was successful, but it wasn't aligned with me internally with what I really wanted and what I was being called greater to do. I felt something greater for me to do. And so I left. I walked out, and that was my first moment. I'd say I had a big awakening that shifted how I was going to, show up. And then it was a series of them from that point that led me to what I'm doing today. And I don't know how much you want me to keep diving or you want to ask questions, but.
Well, I was just about to ask you, was there a precipitous event in the context of your work that sort of had you connect with the discord in your values that was a mismatch, or was it exhaustion? What do you think the sort of driving trigger was for this awakening moment?
For this particular one, it was, being at the top level of government, and as we see, administrations change. And when you're a senior executive, you work at the whim of the administration, whoever's in play. And I had hit that level so quickly, and young. I always knew I was going to change because I was not going to sit at a senior executive level that long, from then until I retired at 56. I was only 36. That's 20 years. I wasn't going to stay at that level that long, just because of how things work. But what it was that I just lost my joy. It changed because I had to, I had gotten used to the administration changes, but it just became old for me after a while. That I'm a person that likes to thrive on challenge and newness. And it was nice. I was actually a controller. So I was a controller and I dealt with money. And it was very logic oriented, left brain oriented. But one of the things I realized is I'm a very right brain kind of person, which is more creative and intuitively connected. Brain's logic, right brain's intuitive. And so that was where it really that's when I started to really feel the disconnect. And it was like, there's something more and I need to be going in another direction. I was good at what I did. So I moved up the ladder so fast and it was fun, but it got to a point where that feeling that disconnection or feeling that I wasn't quite doing what I was meant to do just got louder and louder and louder until I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Did your intuition help you read certain people you had business relationships with, and could you then sort of recognize when people were being false or being out of integrity? Did it help you like glean when you were faced with someone who was operating at a level of deceit or a level of miscommunication?
I'd say yeah, because I could feel when something, and we all can do this. You can feel when something is off when you're around someone, just when it's not really connecting or resonating in the right way. If you ever feel that something is off, a hesitation, a little fear, a disconnection, that's time to get quiet and pay attention that something is out of alignment for you and something's not connecting with you in the right way. And so, yes, I that was one of the things I always said was helpful for me, is like I could read situations, I could read people pretty well. And so that was, when you're saying part of my disconnection was, and I think we've all encountered this, if you've had a career, you work with people that it feels right with, and you work with people that it doesn't feel right with. And we had a particular change, and with this administration change, I had a boss that it just didn't feel right with. And I was like, this was time for me to make a change, because I knew I had so much more to offer, and in a different way, because I know I was being pulled to do a different path. But some of the people who challenge us the most are our best teachers, and they're the ones that drive us to get quiet and really start honoring what we want, because they're the ones that are that irritant that makes you pay attention to what's really true for yourself.
This idea is occurring to me that really on our path is the goal of loving ourselves and really knowing who we are and loving ourselves. And I have even recently times in my life where I don't like who I am. I'm not consciously thinking that, but I'm not comfortable in my body. I'm wondering, you mentioned these awakenings. Have you had a time in your life where you weren't comfortable in your body?
You know, I love that question, Greg, because we all go through that. You know, the one thing people need to realize is that we're just all beautiful, evolving work in progress. There's no perfection. There's nothing you're ever you're not doing anything wrong. You're learning, you're growing, and you're evolving into the next best version of yourself. That's all we're ever doing. So if you hold yourself to any standards of perfection or comparison, or I should be or could be, or stop. For anybody, stop, because that's not what it's about. It's about showing up, honoring yourself and loving yourself, because we all are unique. We all have unique talents and gifts and a perspective. And you have to show up, love that, and bring it to the table. Because on the other side of your uniqueness and what you bring to the world, somebody's going to be helped by it. And I'm going to give you an example. If you guys just give me a minute I have to, because with what you were saying, Greg, that's a beautiful question. That this will bring me to another one of my awakenings that were later in life that actually has led me to be out talking about this and writing my book. But I have my son, who is, he was 8 at the time, and he has this heightened sense of intuition and intuitiveness about him. And most kids do when they're younger. It's just they get caught out of it as they get older, as they start going through school and getting older. But my son had these heightened intuition, and he is just very advanced thinker and advanced for his age. And he was going to school one day and talking about things that were just, he's always been advanced. And I'll just give you a little side. He got accepted into college in 8th grade, community college. So he's an advanced thinker. But just to set the context of why I say that, he's just always thought a little bit differently. But he would go to school and he would start talking about things that kids at 8, 9 years old didn't understand. So they labeled him as weird. So he was getting bullied quite a bit, as some of our kids do. He was getting bullied. But we were helping him, my husband and I, with how to get comfortable with his intuitive abilities and all. And with my heightened sensitivities and heightened abilities, I do intuitive guidance sessions for folks. But I was doing it quietly because I didn't tell people about it, because I grew up Catholic and, religion. And we didn't talk about having these heightened abilities of sensitivities, how to connect into things and energies. So I was doing that quietly behind the scenes for people. And my son came home and I was trying to tell him, you have to be proud and honor your unique gifts. You're this way for a reason. Be confident in yourself. And he looked at me and he said, Mom, I can't be me until you be you. Stop hiding.
Wow, that's a wake-up call.
That's a huge wake-up call for a parent or for anyone.
Right.
And so that was me, because I wasn't fully comfortable. I had this unique set of skills that had developed. I didn't know what to do with it. I was quietly doing it. I didn't want people to think I was weird or whatever people, because of being concerned about what others think, instead of stepping into my loving myself and stepping fully into me. And so when he said that to me, I said, wow, I was like life, whatever you want to call it, God, universe, whatever, smacked me in the head and said, wake up. You have this beautiful, amazing child with these amazing gifts as well. He can't be who he is unless he sees you modeling it, unless he sees you love yourself, accept yourself, and show up the way you're meant to show up. And so it was because of that conversation with him at 8, then I fully embraced it, and I stepped out. I ended up writing my book. I stepped out, and I do talks now and show up as me. And the thing that I think is so beautiful about all of this is when we show up and love who we are. Like I said, there's people on the other side of that get help, because when you give yourself permission to be yourself, you give your children permission to be themselves, the people around you to be themselves, and somebody will be helped and blessed on the other side of what you bring out and bring to the table.
People that I work close with call this answering the call. And I'm wondering if you could describe the moment or series of moments where you've heard the call to writing the book.
Well, I love that. That's a great question, because like I was mentioning about these series of mini awakenings. I'm sorry. Let me get a little water here. This was in 2013. When I had my son, I gave birth to him, but 3 months later, my mother passed away. So that was a really hard time for me. I was going through my highest high and my lowest low at the same time, because my mom and I were best friends, and she was looking forward to my son being here. But she was sickly, and she ended up passing away. So for a 3-year period, I was going through a lot of grief, being a new mom, trying to define my role as now a mother, and knowing I wasn't going back to a career at that point, and also losing my mom. How do I navigate things now? So through this 3-year period of grief and introspection and uncertainty, I started doing, you all remember when Oprah and Deepak Chopra were offering those 30-day meditation challenges?
Yes.
They had those. That was a big thing back then. They were doing them free for people. I started doing that just as a way of managing my grief and managing being a new mom and raising this very active, wonderful little boy. So I started doing those in the fall of 2012. And what I didn't realize was, by doing these meditations, and I started doing back-to-back, so I was like, oh, that was a chance for me to check in with myself, and also just to let go of everything, like say, let go of the noise, around me. And what I didn't realize was just creating those moments of stillness for myself led to me in the beginning of January of 2013, having this, just getting more in alignment with myself, just having these experiences that opened up for me. And as I was getting quiet and sitting in these moments, I would just start hearing rise in me these beautiful wisdom. I'd say with my spiritual ears and heart just coming. And as I was sitting quiet, I just start writing what I was coming to me, and start writing and writing and writing. And that's eventually 10 years of writing. I put up a website and started posting these writings with someone's guidance. They said, oh, these are beautiful. I didn't share them with anybody. I didn't talk about them. But I finally started mentioning, well, I get quiet, and these beautiful writings, these things are coming to me, these wisdoms, and I'm writing them down. And they said it wasn't meant to stay with me. It was meant to be shared. So I put a website up and put them, just these writings. This was back in 2013. And I was telling my husband, I was like, and he kept pushing me, because he's like, you need to do this. You need to do this. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I didn't think anybody was going to look or pay attention to them. But after a while, we started seeing that people were looking at this website with just these writings, and they were getting hits from around the world. People were reading them. reading them and reading them. And I was like, oh, well, maybe there's something to this, you know. And so that's what led. So for 10 years, I was posting these writings and putting them out on my website and putting things up, other things I was just being intuitively led to put up to help, you know, bring comfort and courage, inspire people. And then in 2023, I was just intuitively feeling that guided to put it together in a book. And that's when the book came out. But it was several years, 10 years of me doing this before it ever came to be a book. And it was just me walking through the process of getting comfortable and that these messages really had value and would benefit people.
So how did you manage taking this broad array of writings and then creating an edited, cohesive work around them? Was there an editor that helped you? What was the process of bringing the book to fruition like for you?
Wow. Well, for me, that was, I started getting, you know, following that calling, that nudge. These need to come together and be put in a book. So I already had them on the site. They were kind of edited for even just the website. So I just started pulling them together. I came across a place. I self-published, and I came across a company that, but you know, Marc, I'll tell you, if we listen, you're always being led to different things that come about for you. And this website about this self-publishing company came across my email, and I said, well, let me just take a look at that. So I took a look at it, and then it just started. But every time I thought, well, I need to do this, something appears, whether it's a book, whether it's an email, whether it's someone mentions it. If you hear somebody mention something within a short time, the same thing, like from two different people, or somebody mentions it, or you see it in a book, or you see it on a show, that's your intuition. That's like trying to get your attention. Pay attention. There's something here for you. And that's it. I came across the self-publishing because I didn't know anything about how to do this or what I would do. And I just started following that. And I was like, this makes sense. And I always go with what feels right. Trust your feelings. Trust what feels right for you, because it's always, that's how your intuition is talking to you and leading you to your next best step. And so that's what happened. And I signed up with this company and went through the whole process and got the book, got it up and got it out. And I've been very, very blessed with what's happened with the book, because it's won many awards and it's gotten a lot of reviews. And if I'd stayed stuck in my fear of not posting those writings, because what would people think, or how are people going to receive it? Like I said, on the other side of it, I've gotten beautiful messages from people on how it's helped them. And so don't be afraid to follow, even when you don't understand, to follow what you're being called to do.
Have you seen in your mentees similar events in their lives? Can you point to one or two like moments where someone who you've helped, shepherd's not the right word, but helped remind who they really are through the process of reconnecting to their intuitive power and seeing results? Are there some results that people who've worked with you have seen that you could mention?
Well, I think I do coaching with people, coaching and mentoring. And one of the big things that I feel that people walk away with is that working through just some tools to help them feel more grounded and understanding. The big thing with all of this is not that everybody's receiving guidance. It's not that you're not getting guidance. It's learning to trust. Mm-hmm. And that's the one big thing that people come back and say is, I've learned to trust, and I've learned to ground myself in that trust, in trusting what's coming to me, and and following it. And just how people have come back and said, I have a better ease and flow about life. I don't feel so fearful about things or so hesitant. I'm willing to walk toward it, and just knowing that even if I'm going through a challenging season right now, it's okay, because you have to walk through that to get to the other side of what's waiting for you. If we don't have the challenges, just like you can't learn to be courageous if you're not put in situations to express courage. You can't become resilient if you don't go through some times that challenge you to be more resilient. Life is always growing you forward. Right. And the key is if we walk with it. I always say, don't let things make you fearful or bitter or angry, but let it make you better. Let it make you have more understanding, more awareness to move forward. So I think the biggest thing that people always come back and tell me is that I've learned to trust. And I've learned not to be fearful. And I would say it's like following the breadcrumbs that your life is leading you on your path to purpose.
I imagine when your mother passed away, there was an element of maybe not overtly, but a sense like this isn't right. Like you said, part of your dream was to see your mother as a grandmother, and that was part of her dream. Did that, first of all, was that a true experience where in that moment of passing, a sense of this isn't right, this isn't the way the universe is supposed to be? And now with your experience, if that's true, is there a healing where like, oh, that was actually perfect?
Well, I would say two parts to that. When it first happened, of course, it's a shock. And she was sick, so I knew it would come at some point, but I wasn't expecting them because she always bounced back from everything. And so to say, was I angry about it? I wouldn't say angry. I was disappointed, because I really would have loved her to be here. But I will share that her love for me was so strong. We were just so connected. And this is I've told this story at other times, but it's like when you have a love with someone that strong, your connection is beyond the physical. You're always connected to them. When my mother passed away, I knew she was still around me. My son's little baby toys in the house used to go off for no reason. Her little, Elma loves me, or, hello, the little things would go off around the house. And I was always one, it's like, this is strange or unique. But it never scared me because I was like, I know that's my mom sending me her hellos from the other side. That was her way of still staying connected. I used to go to sleep and I would see her standing there for like 8 months so clearly that it would scare me because I was like, oh my gosh, And one night, and still little toys were going off around the house. The lights would flash, the TV would come on, the radio would come on at times. And she came to me in a dream, one of those times, because I stopped being able to hardly sleep because I saw her like, I'm looking at you all. And she said, Ellen, she said, I know that I'm scaring you. And she said, so I'm going to go. And she said, and you'll be okay. And I will be around. And it was after that dream that everything stopped. And I didn't dream about her again. I didn't see her in my dreams, because that's how a lot of times our loved ones visit us in our dreams. They will come periodically. And so, but that was her way of just saying, and I think she was at peace. She moved on, she could go. She knew I would be okay in that moment because I had my son. And so that was one of those profound, so I didn't get angry, but I just wish she could have been there. Right. But I'm going to just give just a little bit more, because this is what was really, my mother wanted to be a writer. She used to write short stories. And so before she passed, this was maybe a year before she passed, she started writing a story about me. There's 8 of us. I come from a family of 8. She started writing a story about me. And I was like, why are you writing this about me? You've got 8 kids. She's like, I just want to. I just feel like, I just want to write the story. And I told her, I was like, well, okay. I always knew she wanted to be a writer. And I said, well, one day I'll see if I can get your short story published for you. I don't know how or when. I'll see what I'll do that for you. Well, she passed away. She wrote the story. And then when I had my son, she had gotten sick, she passed away. She never finished the story. But one of the beautiful things about my book, A Playful Love and Life, she'd been passed away 14 years when this book had come out. 13 years. She passed in 2010. This book came out in 2013. I took her story that she was writing about me and I put it in my book. It's after the about the author section. So even though she had been gone 14 years, I kept my promise to her and I was able to have her story published. And although she didn't finish it, when I got into one of my quiet meditation time, I could feel her presence around me. And we wrote the ending of the story together in my quiet time. So if anybody gets my book and looks at the back of it, it's called Chasing Butterflies. And so I was still able to honor my mom's spirit and to have her part of this project with me. So her story is in the book as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow.
Do you think your mom was worried about you? Like, is that why she stuck around after passing?
Oh, absolutely. I'd absolutely say that because we were so close. We did everything together. We were just best buddies. And she was talking to me about how excited she was. She was going to have a new grandson and, just the things we were going to do together and spending the time. But, 3 months later, she just after he was born, and she didn't get that time with me. So I think it was twofold. I think she knew that I was going to miss her tremendously because that was my best buddy in the world. And so she stuck around just to make sure I was going to be okay. And then I had a brand new baby, which most people, you have your mother or, a mother-in-law, somebody to help you with your child or the talkers. And I didn't have her for that. But I knew she stuck around to make sure I was going to be okay. And when she knew I was going to be okay, she knew it was, she could move on.
It's been a long journey since the publication of the book. And in industries like the movies or other entertainment industries, there's this thing where they say it has legs. And it sounds like it continues to grow. It continues to be something that has momentum and serves more and more people. How did you move from authorship and books to mentorship and coaching?
Well, I feel like it was a natural progression with it because with going from the book, I've always been kind of doing both. Even before the book came about, I was doing some coaching and mentoring with people about their intuition and how to work with it and doing intuitive guidance sessions for people. So the book was just another layer in there, to help support people with it. So I think they both just kind of complemented each other and working together. But even, I'll tell you, Marc, just a little teaser for you guys to get some of the first group here.
All right. There's a part two.
Yeah. So this book is called A Place of Love and Light. And then the subtitle is A Journey Back to Compassion, Authenticity, and Making a Positive Contribution to the World. Well, that was 3 years ago. I've been working on, and just later this year coming out, is A Place of Love, Light, and Learning. Mm-hmm. And it is a 52-week guide to spiritual growth, self-reflection, and intentional living. And so it takes everything in this book and it dives even deeper and gives people a process, a transformational process, daily process that you can do over 52 weeks to help with just your intuition, with your personal growth, your spiritual growth, alignment. So I'm looking forward to that one coming out, and it's going to lend itself even to more, not just individual work, but even group work, or, whether it's in book clubs or coaching or faith communities or whatever it may be. So I'm looking forward to it continuing to grow and expand. And then the coaching to continue to grow from that, not only with me, but people will be able to use this next book and just work, even families, with this book. I'm excited about it.
I'm wondering, we're recording this the day before the July 4th celebration of 250 years. And we're talking about these things of divinity and compassion and intuition. And I personally have an idea that our government is like an eggshell. It's all surface. It's hard. There is no love and light within our federal government. And I'm wondering, from your experience from inside, do you know there to be love and light happening within our federal institution?
Well, I think that, even from when I was on the inside, there are a lot of people who show up with compassion and kindness and wanting to do the right thing in their heart. Because when you go into public service, you can go in private and make more and do more than what you do in public. when people go into public service, you're really also, there's a part of you that's doing heart service work, because that's what you're showing up to do. Because a lot of the services that are being offered out are being offered to help uplift and support, people across the country in different capacities, in different ways. That's why it's centralized with the federal government or governments doing this type of work. I think what can happen is that goes back to when we get distracted by the noise of the world, when we think that, the things or the status or the influence or the being out there and making things happen, the productivity culture, the comparison culture is more important than that compassion, than that authenticity. That's when we start disconnecting from how we treat each other, how we see each other, how we need to show up for each other. And so I believe that that compassion is there. It's getting covered over and buried over by the distractions of what appears to be important versus what truly is important. And if people can stay checked into their own heart center, their own self, and live from that space, because we were born to be compassionate, loving, kind people. That's in all of us. That's really our center. But we've got to reconnect and get back to that. We have to get back to that place and not living for the distractions and the noise that's constantly pulling us, our thinking that something else is more important than that essence of who we are and how we're meant to show up.
There's two institutions you're a part of that I've had the honor of being a part of. One's the institution of a parent, and one's the institution of a marriage or an intimate relationship. And what you're saying, I see also resonates in these areas. Like sometimes I find that I've gotten away from my heart self with my connection with my children, and I'm acting out of a place of a shell, and they remind me like, hey, Dad. And I had this incident the other day, even at the gym. I was with my daughter. We're working out, and she got on her cell phone. And I was like, you can't be on your cell phone in here. And I was acting like a jerk. And I didn't realize it until a gentleman who didn't know that was my daughter, he came and said, you don't have to be rude to her. I was like, oh. It's kind of wonderful how life continues to remind us to get back to our heart and soul.
Yeah, it's always showing us opportunities to do that.
So with your son, who's obviously brilliant academically, and again, this is a generalization. Sometimes I find someone who's that acute in their IQ, there's a disconnect from that empathy element of humanity. Is that a challenge for your son?
Oh no, just the opposite. He feels so deeply, and he is so connected to everything and even the world around him. And I find that with children. I have another effort that dealing with highly intuitive kids, children with heightened intuition abilities like my son, and they are extremely sensitive, and they're extremely connected in a way that they feel things so deeply that they take it on as if it's their own. And a lot of these children get misunderstood, or because sometimes where it may seem like some of these kids may be detached from things, they're actually so tapped in and so connected and tuned into it that it can actually be physically, off-putting, or they deal with, they can deal with anxiety, they can deal with depression, they can deal with things that parents don't understand unless you tap into really listening, give them, honor what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, because they experience life with such a deeper level than what most people understand. And so that's really a key of like how parents need to pay attention to their children in a different way and honor their experiences, not dismiss them. honor them and let them talk about and express how they're feeling. Because a lot of times when they cover things over, they're really maybe hurting more deeply than what you're aware of, because they're feeling everything so much deeper. Even like what's going on in the culture in our world right now. Children are feeling it and experiencing it a whole different way, and maybe acting out in different ways because they don't necessarily have the words or the languaging to put around some of the harshness or some of the, the uncertainties that they may be feeling.
In your
All right, so this is potentially my sticking my foot in my mouth, down my throat. Do you think the history of our nation with equity and race is important to the wholeness of your son's being, the knowledge of it?
Well, ask me that question again so I can make sure I answer it right.
All right. Do you think the history of equity and race in our nation is important? The knowledge of that is important to the wholeness of your son's being?
I think the history of, our nation and just everything that's happened, the history of not just our nation, even the world, plays a huge part in all of our children, in their well-being, even in ours. Because as each generation comes forward and our values, our perspectives, our, just how we show up in the world, the decisions that we make, the tone that we set from leadership down, from whether it's in our governments, whether it's in our communities, whether it's in our especially in our families, everything that we say and do and how we show up and what has happened, when you're saying even race and equity, what has happened, it's how we, the people who are right now, choose to show up, step up, and honor this moment to create a better tomorrow. Because we can only affect change for a better tomorrow. And even when you look at the history, everybody then we're showing up in a way to create a better tomorrow. And it's incrementally gets better. But it takes people showing up to live that compassion, to live that authenticity, and to positively contribute to our time, that we help change the course of what's going to happen in the future. And so I think that we're incrementally, all kids feel everything that's come before. We feel the effects of everything that's come before. But I would just say that everyone needs to take ownership of self-love, self-compassion, because it always starts with the individual. You can't change the future unless you start with yourself. And when we heal ourselves and we show compassion, love for ourselves, you can't help it. It ripples out to affect all of everyone around you, families, communities, ultimately all of humanity. And when we show up in that way, and we can all own that, we change the course, the ripple of what future generations. We can make things better for future generations by making better decisions in this moment right now.
One of the critiques of a kind of approach that is similar to yours is the critique of people who are love and light, is that there's an element of spiritual bypassing that's going on if we focus so much on what is divine in our natures and the way we access those things and the way we can develop them. There's the critique is that we bypass the shadow aspects of humanity, or that we somehow ignore or push down or sort of don't acknowledge how certain groups of people, certain classes of people are suffering and don't have the mental or spiritual bandwidth to actually engage with their divinity because they're so encapsulated by the challenges that they face. How would you respond to that kind of critique?
Well, I think that what people the shadow, I look at shadow, our life is a dance of shadow, light and dark. It's always a dance of those two. And there's something very sacred about that. You need both to help you, us, all of us, starting with the individual and then starting moving out to the collective. You need that you have to honor both because they work together to create the wholeness of us moving forward. Okay. So when we're talking about, like you mentioned about divinity and how to, spiritual bypassing, I look at this every moment that we're in, every moment, even this conversation right here is a holy moment. It's an expression of something that we're having a conversation that people on the other side of this, somebody might walk away with one thing that could help change the trajectory of their life or just make things better for them. I think it's really not spiritual bypassing. I think when we look at everyday choices that we make, every day, everything changes by each choice, each thought, each action that we have. And when we can elevate that higher, those are the divine moments. It's not some grand, separate divine thing that's happening, or it's really the choices that we make. And we have to honor that where we were may not have been where we should have been, but the choice we make in this moment can lead us to something better. And so I don't think we're ever bypassing. I think we have to honor the fact that we grow through the good and the not so good. We grow through both. They both work together to bring everything, individuals and others, to a heightened, new, evolved state. If you let it, it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier. Do we let things make you bitter, or do we let them make us better? And you have a choice to sit on either side of those. If you stay in the part of being in resentment and unforgiveness and fear and all of those things, you're going to swirl around your life, and life situations will continue to unfold in that way. But if we let it make us better, what do we learn from it? Everything's a life lesson. Everything's an opportunity to grow. Everything's an opportunity to move into a better direction. Everything's an opportunity to show more compassion, show more love, to show up authentically. And when we do that, and we do it connected to who we are, which when I go back to, we're all innately love and compassion embodied. We just have forgotten, and we have to reconnect with that. And when you reconnect with that, you can honor the fact that you're going to have challenges. There's going to be dark, there's going to be light, but the two together help inform you being better for yourself and for you being better for the collective.
There's a question that's present for me, and it has a little bit of complexity to it because it's really two questions sort of interwoven together. So I'm going to do my best to articulate it in a way that you can respond to. But as we look at this moment in American history, we're on this birth date of 250 years. We have a complex history that informs where we're at, and the principles of liberty and equal rights and justice and freedom from or to practice religion are embodied in this moment, and there's a legacy from our ancestors. And so the first part of the question is, has there been an awareness in your life of a particular ancestor who carried some of the gifts that you have? That maybe it's a woman who had a stronger intuitive sense, who guided her families. And also, what do you see as the intuitive hit for where we've come from as a country and where we're headed as a country?
Okay, good question. I would say you were mentioning about, has there been somebody basically like in my ancestry that had this kind of heightened, I would say yes, it's come down through my family line, but I'm going to even broaden that out so you'll know. Anyone with heightened intuitive gift, it's somewhere, it runs in families. That's why I even tell people with children who have this heightened gift, you can generally tie it back to somebody in the family who had this heightened sense of intuitive connection. But when you really think about it, our ancestors, they didn't have cars and computers and AI and all this now. So intuition and really needing to tie into your intuitiveness was what guided them, even back from, back in the caveman days. you had to know how to hunt, and where you had to be able to read the wind and the water, and things that help to guide you. So I think it's always in everybody's ancestry, where it's become, because we now have so many modern conveniences that help think for us and do for us. That's part of that distraction, getting us disconnected from the fact that we all have that intuitive connection within us. Are there some that in my family line that had that heightened sense? I'd say yes. I'd say many people have that. So, and I can say, my mother was one who I know, she didn't fully understand it, but I look back on it now, but she just always knew. And you probably have family members that just knew things, just got things, or had a knowing, or could sometimes predict things that you didn't think, or, could come up with, because it's there. And really what I look at that as, when people get more in alignment with who they are, or really get in touch with themselves, that heightens, and that heightens, and you're able to tap into those instincts more easily. So I hope that answers.
Yes, for sure. And do you want to handle the second question as well, more as a collective now, in the same sort of vein?
About our country.
For our country. I think, and tell me again that question, because I want to make sure I answer that just right for you.
We have a very complex history of where we come from and the cultural ramifications of colonialism and the usurpation of indigenous cultures and the enslavement of African people and the centering of white men as the power structure. And in it, there's this intensity that we're all reviewing as a culture right now, especially in the last 10 to 15 years. But along with it is the promise of an open society and a kind of equal rights and justice and freedom of religion and those sorts of things. And here we sit at this moment of reflection of 250 years past. How do you feel about the context? And then what's your intuitive hit on where we're heading?
Well, I look at the history. America does have a very complex history. And the thing is, just like what I was mentioning earlier, it's like the history, we've evolved. It's all about evolving. It's all about evolution of things and how you grow and you learn. And so even with the start of this country, the ancestors of anybody coming over, they were doing the best with what they knew at the time and how things operated at that time. And I think it's incumbent upon every generation, and you can see progress has been made in America over these 250 years with race, with gender, with religion, with a level of acceptance. Are we fully there? No. Do we still have a lot of work to do? Absolutely. But it's all of us, goes back to recognizing where we are with things and coming at it from a more compassionate way of living and being. That's what's going to make things different, is when we start seeing each other, whether in this country or around the world, as brothers and sisters, and not otherizing each other. When we start looking at people as the human beings that we are, that have shared experiences, we all experience love, we all experience pain, we all experience success and sadness and joy, and all those different things. We all have challenges. They may be unique to each person, each individual, each culture, each, naturally, each background, each country. But everybody understands laughter, and everybody understands pain, and everybody understands joy, and everybody understands we want the best for our family, and everybody understands that we want to love and embrace our own selves, regardless of what we look like and who we are, and how we're here in the world. That each one of us has something beautiful to offer, because not only America, but this country is a beautiful tapestry of differences. And those differences aren't meant to divide us. They're meant to come together and elevate us, if we look at it that way, because it's these differences You don't want everybody to have the same perspective or show up the same, because we leverage the best of us when we leverage the differences among us. But we do it with compassion, we do it with love, and we do it with wanting the best for each other and having the best interest of each other, not, looking at stovepipes or being self-serving for certain groups or but for the collective. And that's the key. I feel that if we, in this moment, the people that are right here, step into owning ourselves and owning how we put our thoughts and actions and intentions out in the world, be more loving, to be more compassionate, and just, I may look different than both of you, and I'm a different gender, I'm a different color, but we are all here having a conversation that is so important to all of us about showing up as the best of ourselves. And if we can do that in this moment, and everyone can make that commitment, the ripple effect of what we show our children, what we teach our families, what we start doing in our communities, we would start changing things. So I always see the possibility of what could be. And I see that America going forward, and I see the world going forward, can move into a better place if we all choose to step up and be the best of ourselves and put that energy out, put that love and compassion out. We can exponentially change what's happening going forward. And we have to have the voice of compassion and love and kindness. It needs to be heard, and it needs to resonate. And that resonance will have a huge ripple effect. And people have to start pushing back on anything that's less than love for each person around us.
So when we cease projecting our fear and projecting our anger and frustration and shame onto other groups of people, we have a chance to step outside of all of that shadow and into what's really available to us, which is the connective tissue, the aspects of each other that we share.
That's absolutely it, because we all have more in common, really, than the differences, if we choose to see it that way. And you're absolutely right. You can step out of the shadow when you start seeing our commonalities and our real human connection, and not just the physical of what we look like, but that human connection, and start treating each other from that compassionate, loving space of that human connection.
And it starts with our ability to manage our own energy, our own frustration, anger, sadness, the negative emotions that cause us to project our pain onto others. And then when we can reverse that and open our hearts and see the mutuality of it, that's where the doorway to compassion begins to open and the light gets in.
That's absolutely right, Marc.
It occurs to me that potentially there's a part of me that thinks like we're circumventing our shadow. But what just popped into my head is the story of the Good Samaritan, and how potentially in that story, in helping the Samaritan, he was feeling those emotions of shadow, of anger and hatred, and still chose to help the individual needing help. And perhaps that's part of our bravery we're being called to, is to be brave while our emotional id is erupting in chaos.
Yeah, because, compassion is bigger, just like you said, the world conditions us. We're all conditioned to think a certain way, to be a certain way, because when we come into the world, you're born into different situations, circumstances, nationality, gender, the whole thing. You're born into a idea, and you're given an identity, and that identity is very narrow. So when we can step out of that and we can start looking at that, we're much more than just this identity that we've gotten. We're really these wonderful, loving souls, these beautiful, compassionate souls that have come in to really make a positive difference in the world. But we've got to step over the conditioning of the fact that there's anger and fear and uncertainty. With each step, if we can make it in compassion, even to somebody who's hurt you or made you upset, if you can realize that there's a couple of things I've heard this saying, hurting people hurt people. You know, people doing negative things, usually there's something more. There's a reason around that because they've lost connection with their compassionate side. But if you can show that compassion, if you can step forward with love, then you're putting that out there. And usually if you put it forward, it will come back to you. And if it doesn't, that person eventually will get the message of change, you know, because life is going to keep speaking to you. You're going to keep having you're going to keep going around the same challenges over and over and over until you learn the lesson and you pass it and you step beyond it. Life will keep smacking you around and you wonder, why does this always happen to me? Well, because you're not learning that you need to show up differently. You need to make a different choice, a different decision, have a different thought, a different approach. And usually when you do it out of love and compassion, you're always going to have a better outcome. It leads always to the more aligned outcome, not only for yourself, but it shines a light for someone else to be better and do better and be different. And so if you can always show up in that way, is it easy? No. Because sometimes you just want to smack somebody upside the head. You can't do that. You just have to step back and you have to have some compassion and say, you know, they'll get eventually, but I'm not going to let them affect how I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up as my best self. I'm going to show up as my light. I'm going to show up as compassion and love. And sometimes I might get knocked around a little bit, but I can feel good in my soul, knowing that I did what I'm supposed to do and what I was put here to do to help make things better. So
now, to what degree is your book a story or a manual for how to do this? And what's kind of the mix of those two aspects of your book?
Oh, I love it. The book it's really more, I would say it's more of a reflective guide for you. So when you open it up, it's 150 short writings. They're short. So when I talk to people about making time, and I'm not talking about meditation, I'm just talking about getting quiet each day. Just taking, even if you can, just 5 minutes for yourself, because we're usually running around for everybody else, expectations, obligations, responsibilities. We've got all these things on it that we get lost in the process ourselves. Male, female, doesn't matter. You can be young, old, you just got to take some time for yourself just to stop the noise. And then just notice what's going on with you and give yourself space to get quiet and start tapping into what feels true for you. This book has 150 short reflective writings that you can just read. You can read them in sequence, or you can just open it up intuitively and let whatever message comes to you. And use that to sit in that space to help you ground and center in more compassion and love. So it's not a novel. You don't have to, it's not like that. Just pick it up, have it as a resource to give yourself a little reflection. I could say soul nourishment, you know, just a little reflection time. This one is that way, and the new one is that way, but with guided daily prompts for you to work with.
When is that new one going to be available?
It's going to be out a little later this year, so I'm going to say in the fall. So love to come back and talk to you about it.
Yeah, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah,
For
please.
sure.
That'd be
Would
wonderful.
love that. But it'll be out in the fall, and anybody following my website or information, you'll see when the release will be. But it will definitely be the fall of this year, and I'm excited, looking forward to it.
All right, do you want to speak your website out right now?
Oh, sure. It's ellenedmondson.com.
Okay.
So that's where people can go and get, you know, different information about me and what I do. And I hold a monthly workshop, and it's on the first Sunday of the month, and it's free for anybody who wants to come. And it's from 7 to 8:30 in the evenings, and it's called Come Home to the Light Within. And it's just, I tell people, it's giving yourself the gift that 90 minutes. We just quiet the noise. We do some journaling. We have some discussion, you know, community, and we just focus on how do we quiet the noise and how do we start tapping and listening to that inner guidance that's always talking to us, but in trying to get our attention, you just need to shut the noise out so we can start hearing it and then learning to trust it.
Does Catholicism still inform your spiritual life?
Well, I grew up, my mother was a devout Catholic, my family, we were devout Catholics. I'd say yes, that's always going to be a part of who I am, but is everything I write about revolve around that? No. My works are very universal. Anybody of any faith and any background can pick this up and step into it because it speaks to the human experience, not a specific belief system. That's with this one or with the other book. And that's some of what has warmed my heart, that people have picked that up. Of anybody of different backgrounds and faith beliefs and things, this has really been helpful. So for me, I think my Catholicism grounded me in my spirituality, and that's what's helped me to create part of this platform. So it's always there, but it's not driving or the guiding force behind my perspectives and how I present them.
For the last several minutes, I've been hearing this calling within myself. And in honoring of intuition as part of this discussion, I'm going to offer it to everyone who's listening right now and to us. And it's a bit odd for a podcast to offer this idea, but let's go ahead and be quiet together for 60 seconds and just take a deep breath. So I'm going to go ahead and keep time, and we'll start now. Just take a nice deep breath in and then breathe normally as you might, and we will just allow the quiet for 1 minute. So now, as we return to the conversation, we can have a little laugh at the absurdity of having to talk all the time with each other and noticing what might have come up for you. Like for me, I noticed that, oh my God, I'm never going to make it through 1 minute of this quietness. And then I just kept breathing and allowed myself to relax. And then I started to feel myself settle. And I was like, oh, this will be good. And it's a great way to sort of highlight what Greg and I do with each guest, which we have a question that we love to ask every guest that comes on here. And it's important to us. This is a meaningful question for us, and it's not frivolous. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer, Ellen.
But before we ask that final question, so Ellen, how was that minute for you? Have you ever done that in a podcast?
Not in a podcast. I do that for myself. So that felt wonderful to do it with the both of you. That's like that collective energy doing it together. It felt great. So I appreciate you doing that, Marc, because that's important. People have to we get so caught up in just going and doing all the time that we forget that it's okay. And it should feel comfortable just sitting with yourself in the silence. And the more you do that, the more the guidance comes.
How was it for you, Greg?
It was brilliant. Like I heard the birds outside and something chirping around on the roof. I think it was a brilliant choice, Marc. I was really.
Thank you.
That's what happens when you trust your intuition.
Okay. All right, is there anything else before we wrap up that you'd like to voice, Ellen?
Oh, I appreciate this conversation that you both have had and inviting me here to do this with you. I hope that just what Marc did, that people will just create that space create it and get comfortable with it. Because when you get comfortable with it, you get comfortable more with yourself, and you start to notice things, and you'll start to hear the voice of your own soul rising up and giving you the guidance that's going to help you to walk your path with a little more clarity, a little more certainty. Doesn't mean challenges aren't going to be there, but it means that with each step, you gain the clarity, you gain the peace, and you'll gain more understanding of what you're meant to show up and do. And then do that, because someone is waiting to be blessed by your compassionate life that is there, that you're meant to bring to the world.
That's a beautiful statement. Someone's waiting to be blessed by your compassionate light. That's brilliant. All right. So our final question. Marc, you want to be honest?
Eminem or Foo Fighters?
Ooh, good question. You know, I don't even know how to answer that one.
Trust your intuition.
I'm gonna say both. It depends on the day.
Beautiful. There's no wrong answer to this question. It's part of why we love it, is we get to experience this moment of conundrum. Like it's awesome to see people go, what? Like, because they're always expecting something else. And all right, well, different days, different ones. Got it. Thank you for that, Ellen. And thanks for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you when your next book comes out. We'll be sure to include links in the show notes for people to get access to your website, to look at A Place of Love and Light. And wow, what a joy.
Oh, it's been a joy being with both of you. Wonderful conversation. I appreciate the invite and you allowing me to share with you and with your audience. This has been wonderful.
Recording stopped.